is everything, because I think to the average consumer, they can tell the difference between, there's 4 types of wine: good, bad, red, good, bad, white. They don't, you worked with the Psalms, so you got to see and feel and understand a lot of the intricacies of what you're actually tasting. But from, Joe Schmo in the Midwest, he tastes something, goes, I like that, or I don't. And so a lot of the times it really is the story behind why and where and who, and educating the customer.
Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Well, I mean, I appreciate him coming off of his high perch of owned and operated to come down to us little guys. But we got him. We got the man, Jack Carr, in the house. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. I'm just happy that I finally got on something with you, because I feel so bad. For those who don't know, Austin and I were supposed to meet up a year ago when I was in like the storage units, and I was moving around a bunch, and I gave him the wrong phone number by a single digit. And the poor guy was waiting outside the office on the day we were supposed to meet for, I don't know what, 2 hours. And
It's probably like an hour and a half. Yeah.
I still feel guilty to this day about it. So I'm just happy to be on the show. I'm happy to finally see you. And I think you're coming to Nashville soon. Yeah.
Yeah, next month we guilt. I like to use guilt and manipulation. It's a big tactic for me since I was like 3 years old. So it all works, So it's so weird because the original way we connected, even though we're both in HVAC and plumbing now, was wine.
Yeah, definitely.
So I sold wine for 20 years, and then you're like, yeah, I was out in Napa, like cleaning tanks, and then but like, I'm so confused. Are you actually like a trained engineer, or is it just like something that you learned?
Yeah, so my background is kind of what you're getting at. And my background originally was, I went to school for bioresource agricultural engineering, which was super fun, but it was ag engineering in California. And I didn't want to work in the Central Valley. And the first place I went after college was to go work in the Central Valley, Bakersfield. And I said, I need to get out of Bakersfield as quick as I can. I had family up in Napa. My family owned a lot of acreage in Napa. So I went up there. I did my internships in college up there, and I started my journey as the facilities manager at a really well-known but decent-sized winery. Worked my way up and ended up, by the time I left 6 years later, was the operations manager running facilities, janitorial, bottling, the whole gambit. Everything that wasn't physically making winemaking decisions and wasn't on like the sales and or I guess the customer service side. I didn't really deal with the general public, but everything else was mine for the whole portfolio, which at the time was, I believe, nine wineries.
Okay. Yeah, and don't go any further, because so to me, I remember, so I was knee deep in it. I mean, when I say knee deep in it, like I want to say the place I worked at houses 7 of the best Psalms like throughout the country now, like when they were nobody. Like,
oh, that's cool.
It was Wine Geek Central. The wine had started becoming very popular. It was always popular, but Psalm movie had come out. I worked at a place where you sold wine, but we could, like, it was like even to this day, the guy that taught me can eat dirt and tell you what the wine is. Like, he's that, like, that's the guy that trained me. Like seriously. And so I was knee deep in it. I really was. Until a couple things changed my life. All right, because wine by nature, unless you're like a Gallo or something, is a rich man's game for sure. Because you're probably not going to make it much money unless you just really hit it with a brand. But I started meeting these winemakers, and I started meeting, more importantly, the farmers that did the wine for the people. And oh my goodness, if these weren't the greatest humans I've ever met in my entire life. I mean, it's such a I'm sure you had the pleasure of meeting a lot of interesting. I just found them to be so fascinating.
Yeah. So I'm fine telling the first place I worked. So the first place I worked was Stag's Leap Wine Cellars. So I actually got to meet
Yes.
Warren Winiarski, who just passed away actually, who put Napa on the map and won the Tasting of Paris in the early 70s. I think it was 1972 or 1976. But there's a bunch of movies about him and that first tasting of Paris, and so that was their claim to fame. So I became a cab snob right out the gate. I mean, you can't, like, your Stag's Leap District. I was a young, just out of college drinking PBR, and then you throw me with these $300 bottles of like Cask 23 from Stag's Leap, and it's just absolutely fabulous.
Mhm.
So really a big fan. Love the wine industry still to this day. Really big fan. Miss some parts of it, other parts not so much, but on the whole, the wine industry is a very fun industry to be in.
I think they're. I try to tell my sales, relating wine sales knowledge to a bunch of Northwest PA guys selling HVAC.
Right.
But I told them all the time, the wine that I sold was on a story. Like, literally, the wine was on a story. There was a lot of wine on the menu that maybe was from Europe, maybe was from Portugal that you didn't know, and maybe it was way cheaper than America. But I've never really tasted it. You sold it on story. And so there's wine that, you fall in love with the story and then the wine has to back it up. And so I think there's a lot of correlations to understanding the feel of kind of being at the winery, but also the story of why we're making the wine. I always find that to be really cool, but there's also a lot of technicality and mechanical stuff and storage, and it's a very complex business.
Yeah, and you're right. By the way, the story is everything, because I think to the average consumer, they can tell the difference between, there's 4 types of wine: good, bad, red, good, bad, white. They don't, you worked with the Psalms, so you got to see and feel and understand a lot of the intricacies of what you're actually tasting. But from Joe Schmo in the Midwest, he tastes something, goes, I like that, or I don't. And so a lot of the times it really is the story behind why and where and who, and educating the customer, which ironically, even though it's HVAC, it transfers well, right?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, I can imagine.
It does. I tell them the story about so also in that same time frame, I worked at a place in Nashville called Husk that had 250 whiskeys on the menu from 1918. There's a whiskey called Jefferson Ocean. Okay, and Jefferson Ocean is a very popular whiskey that's aged in barrels on the ocean, like straight up.
Yeah.
Do I know if it makes the whiskey better? I don't know, but it sure sold a lot. You know, and so I try to tell my guys these stories all the time, like this is how you paint a perfect example. We'll tie it into HVAC. I got a sales guy he knows more about HVAC than anybody's ever forgotten. I mean, literally. But guess what happens when he tells the 60-year-old woman about the technology and the thing? Exactly.
Complete blank stare. Yeah, nothing.
And so he's starting to see it now, and he's saying, oh, okay, she doesn't need to know all that.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, she doesn't. And so let me get this straight. So you're in beautiful, which is one of my favorite parts of the entire country. I'm not saying I love everybody that lives there, but it's a very beautiful place. Calistoga, all that up the valley. And you go, hey, baby, hey, wife, we're going to leave and move to Tennessee, and I'm going to go install HVAC systems and figure this whole thing out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to the story than that. So there's some middle parts that are missing. So I've always had a very entrepreneurial spirit. And so I actually tried my hand at making wine at one point.
Okay.
Which is a great story maybe for another day.
Yeah.
But it ended up in exploding bottles. I mean, I sold it out like crazy. I sold hundreds and hundreds of cases. But my lack of winemaking experience, I should say, on the back end, and the person who I hired to do the winemaking forgot to kill yeast making champagne, and exploding bottles in people's houses of neon purple honey, raspberry dragon fruit honey wine, neon purple, if it got over 50 degrees, the yeast would be eating the sugars because it was super sugary drink, as you can imagine. I was trying to build a brand like, you know how the craft brewery scene was kind of, it was hurt by seltzers, the optionality with sweet, fun flavors. I was trying to do the same thing in wine, and it worked. We sold out 3 sets of kind of doing it, pallets and pallets of wine. And then the last one, which was a 3 pallet batch, about, I think, 1,500 gallons of wine. All of it decided to explode in people's houses. Corks popping, wine everywhere. So really rough industry if you mess it up, but it was fun. So the question, sorry, I know I went off on a tangent
that
there.
was money, because it couldn't have been a nice soft white. It had to have been the most, ridiculously bright color.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody thought they were getting shot. Like, it's a whole thing.
There's probably still stains on the ceiling of our rental in Napa from the corks popping, and like it was geyser. It would just geyser out of nowhere. Huge geyser of purple. But the point of that story was I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. So while I was working in Napa, my wife and I had our first son, or our only son, in 2020 and during COVID, and we came to the conclusion, like many others did, that there's more to life type of deal. I was waking up and going to work up in Healdsburg before he got up in the morning, and I'd get home after he went to bed. So I didn't see my son for 3-4 weeks at a time. And I said, this is just not sustainable. This is not enjoyable. We were on 4-10 schedules. Like, it was just really rough. It was very good work, but very hard work and very long days. And so with that, we said, okay, let's look at some other stuff. And meanwhile, while I was doing kind of all these entrepreneurial side gigs, I started a Bitcoin mining farm circa like 2018. So I said, what if we just exit this? We sell off everything. It was right in 2020 as one of the cycles kind of peaked. I sold off the entire Bitcoin mining farm. We had, like, I want to say 24, 28 rigs going at a time. We liquidated all the Bitcoin. We sold all the equipment. We sold the location. And so we had, really good stack to say, let's just go. And that's what we did. We went, and I bought a 40 or 32 foot travel trailer, a big old F-250, double cab, long bed, like the biggest monster you could buy. And we took off to go spend 2 years, at least the plan was 2 years, traveling the country, finding out where we want to live. And we love Napa. It was beautiful, but we realized that the amount of what we could buy for our money was never going to get us what we could buy for our money in other locations. So, I mean, for $1 million in Napa, you can go and get a 3-bed, 2-bath home built in 1960 on, a little tiny lot. And we said, if that same amount in Atlanta, Georgia, you would get a 6,000 square foot home at the time on 7 acres. And that's kind of what we were looking at. But we didn't know where. So we took off. And right as we left on the first day, my wife goes, hey, I got to tell you something. I'm pregnant. And I go, okay, well, that just cut our trip short a little bit. All right. Where we get through about 6 states. I think we're up in Idaho at the time. Actually, I know we were up in Idaho at the time, Coeur d'Alene. And she says, I got this, honey. I'm going to go ahead and do this ultrasound by myself. We already had one kid. We had him during COVID. Like, my wife's was a trooper through the whole thing. She did an amazing job. And she calls me and goes, it's not 1, it's 2.
Oh.
So we had twins. We have 2 little twin girls who are happy, healthy, amazing. So we had to stop. We stopped in Boise. We stopped for a year in Boise, raised the girls a little bit. They got older, but we had 3 under 2 years old at one point. And so needless to say, I wasn't going back to work, but I was still looking to buy. And this is kind of the peak of, or at least in my view, one of the peaks of SMB Twitter and this really big buy rally.
Yeah.
And so do you have any questions before I keep going? I know I'm just rambling.
No. It's so great because, anybody that's listening to this would say, yeah, but look at the price of Bitcoin now and all that stuff like that. And one of the things that I don't think enough people, and I know that you and I are very similar in this way, I don't regret any of the seasons in my life for what I was excited about then. Right.
Yeah.
And so like, I spent 7 years in large scale real estate all across the country. Like I've never and I'll still invest in real estate, but it's in a different form now. But that taught me so much, and it gave me tangible assets to roll the dice with and figure out logistics. And so I would imagine that before we jump into the whole HVAC thing, that's probably the way you look at it too. There was a lot learned in the Bitcoin era.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, a ton learned in that era. There was a ton learned. We actually were buying and selling real estate around that time too. So we still have some real estate in Napa, which is wonderful. We liquidated all of our real estate that we had. We were buying in Reno at the time, which we got out a little early, but once again, like you said, it's all just a season. And when you're looking at doing other things or the excitement, right? I don't regret any of it, even though, some would say, hey, well, you left some money on the table. Yeah, well, you could have also lost all that money if it went the other direction. So, I can't, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
But that travel trailer with my wife and my son, and that year I got like with my family, not working and not stressing about anything. So we saw all the national parks and did all this stuff, and we had such a good time. Those memories forever, some of the best.
No, you can't get them back. So I will say that, you did get pretty nice. I mean, it's not like you found an HVAC company to buy in like, and I apologize everybody, like Nebraska or like Kansas. Like you picked a cool city. I used to live there. It's a cool city.
Yeah.
But that being said, you also picked a city that's got, bigger players in it too. So the competition is live and ready to roll.
Yeah, looking back, I mean, there's some pros and cons to this entire thing that I'm about to say. One is I bought wrong. I made the mistake that everyone does on their first one. Not everyone, but a lot of people do. I overvalued the company. So that was a scramble to try and get to a point where the company's value matched my debt, to a point where, it was kind of helpful. And then, I chose small fish, very small fish in a very big pond. And so there's a lot more upside. And this is up to the operator at the end of the day, or the acquirer, what troubles they want. But the troubles of small fish, big pond are very difficult compared to the different issues of big fish, small pond. So they're just different issues. You have to deal with different things. And we were very small fish, sub 1 million in Nashville, a area that has 3 to, I want to say 6. I know of at least 3, but my guess is another couple at least that are $100 million plus companies that we compete regularly against. I mean, you have Hoffman Brothers that have moved in. You have Coolray that have moved in. There's a lot of PE money that's swirling.
And you're down in Franklin. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're down in Brentwood, Franklin, which provides some kind of shelter. It's a suburb, very, very wealthy. And I got lucky in that the one business that I bought was the number one on Google in that area, not including PPC, not including LSA, but number one HVAC company in Brentwood, which sustained me through a lot of mistakes and rough times early on.
No, I love that. And, we're going to talk about that in a second episode.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack all that. So I wanted to get that point across. But, like, the way that I would zoom out and I would think about, like, your life to, like, put a bow on this whole area is, like, Franklin and Brentwood is probably top 3 areas to raise a family in America, next to Frisco, Texas, Brentwood, and probably somewhere in Utah or something like that, right? So, and then Napa, and then you got to spend that year. Like, you've really been very blessed from a family point of view to have great environment for the kids to grow up in, probably friends, other entrepreneurs in that area. Like, that's probably been very pleasant to kind of, not stumble your way, but the doors open up for the right ways.
Stumble the way is not a terrible way to put it, to be honest with you. I mean, we pinpointed some areas when we were doing the search with those parameters in mind, right? So we had, for example, we had Frisco and Texas on the kind of search radar, as well as Austin, Bee Cave, once again because of the great schools, the good community, beautiful area. All around that Lake Travis area down in Texas is gorgeous. Brentwood, Franklin, Nashville on the whole. So we had different areas in mind that we were searching. And so but the way it happened, very happy at the end. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's all the hardships along the way, but I mean, we're in a wonderful area that's very family oriented. We have the 3 little ones that are going to, top-notch schools, and a great business
and
that
you just can't stop buying companies, and we'll see where we wind up. So if people want to reach out to you, they want to find you, they want to find the podcast, the amazing podcast that my whole company listens to. How do they do that?
So the HVAC Jack on Twitter for me directly, and ownedandoperated.com for our pod with John, and to hear more about plumbing, HVAC, and electrical.
I love it. Guys, if you like this episode, send it to a friend, share it around. We'll see you next time. Guys, let me take a minute to tell you about my buddies over at Lead Hub, Ben and Aaron, the best humans I know. Not only are they amazing at marketing for trade companies, but Ben started his HVAC company in his garage, sold it for multi-million-dollar. So when this guy talks, I listen. When we took over Dietz Mechanical, we had 22 reviews in 22 years. In 7 short months, we went from 22 reviews to 107. We went from a 4.2 to a 4.7. We tripled our Facebook presence, and we tripled our calls. If you're an HVAC, plumbing, electric, landscaping company, and you're looking for a no BS approach to marketing, you're looking for people who have done it before, you got to go to leadhub.net